Mr. Cole, before you sign, something is wrong with that man. And something is very wrong with that company.
Cora, do you know what a liquidation preference is? A convertible note?
No, sir. But I know what a scared person looks like. And that young woman with him is terrified.
This deal has been through 4 months of due diligence by the smartest people in the world, so why don't you let me handle the billion-dollar deal and you stay in your lane? It's all right, Harrison. The help gets nervous around big numbers. Shall we go sign?
Honey, before they sign, can I ask you something?
I don't know what this woman thinks she's...
Sit down, Mr. Crane. Let her talk.
Look at me, baby. Not at him. At me. Is what's in those papers true? Because this is the last second you'll ever get to say it isn't.
There were 12 men in that room worth more than most countries. And the wisest person in it was the woman refilling their coffee. Nobody saw her. That was the whole point. That's how it always was. Miss Cora Bell had been pouring coffee for rich men for 19 years, and in 19 years she had learned the single most useful fact about powerful people. When they think you can't understand them, they stop hiding. So they talked. Right in front of her. Deals, secrets, lies, all of it. Spoken freely over a woman in a gray uniform holding a silver pot, because to them she was furniture. A nice lamp that happened to pour, and on this particular night, Miss Cora was watching one man very, very closely. His name was Sebastian Crane. Handsome, charming, the center of every conversation. He had flown in to close the biggest deal of Harrison Cole's life, $1 billion going into Crane's company, signed by the weekend. Everyone in that room loved Sebastian Crane. Everyone except the woman with the coffee pot, because Miss Cora had seen something none of those 12 brilliant men had seen, because they were looking at his pitch, and she was looking at his hands, at the way his smile turned off like a light switch the second Mr. Cole looked away. On the way he spoke to the waitstaff when he thought no one important was listening. She'd seen that exact man before, a long time ago. And the last time she saw a man like Sebastian Crane, he took everything her family had and left her husband too ashamed to keep living. So in 3 days, Miss Cora was going to walk up to Harrison Cole and tell him the truth. And Harrison Cole was going to look at the gray uniform and the coffee pot, and he was going to say 4 words that men like him always say. Stay in your lane. And then, at the very last second, with $1 billion pen already in his hand, Miss Cora was going to say 9 words that stopped everything. But she wasn't going to say them to him. Stay with me on this one all the way to the end, because the words that saved that deal weren't aimed at the most powerful man in the room. They were aimed at the most frightened person in it. And that's what makes this story different from anything you've heard. Hit that like button right now and subscribe, because you need to see who she finally spoke to. Let me tell you who Miss Cora was. Cora Bell was 63 years old. For 19 years, she had run the household of Harrison Cole, one of the richest men in Greenwich, Connecticut. And Greenwich is where the richest men in the world go to feel normal. She managed his staff. She knew where everything was. She knew how he took his coffee and which suits he wore when he was nervous and what he muttered to himself when a deal went bad. And she was, to Harrison Cole, completely invisible. Not out of cruelty, exactly. Harrison Cole wasn't a monster. He just came from a world where some people were people, and some people were part of the house, and Cora Bell had always been part of the house. He'd have told you he respected her. He paid her well. He remembered her birthday, more or less. But if you'd asked Harrison Cole what Cora Bell thought about anything, what she'd seen in her long life, what she understood about the human heart, he'd have looked at you like you asked what the furniture thought. That was his blind spot. And it was about to cost him $1 billion. Or save him one. Depending entirely on whether he could learn in 3 days to see the woman who'd been standing in his house for 19 years. Here's what Harrison Cole couldn't see. Cora Bell was the smartest reader of people he would ever employ. Not because she had a degree, because she'd had to be. When you spend your whole life being treated like you don't matter, You get very, very good at watching the people who think they do. You learn to read a room the way a sailor reads the sky. Not because it's a hobby, but because your survival depends on knowing which way the wind is about to turn. Cora had spent 19 years reading the men in Harrison Cole's dining room. She knew which ones were lying before they finished their sentences. She knew which marriages were ending and which partners were about to betray each other and which sure things were going to blow up. She was never wrong, and she never said a word because nobody ever asked. Until Sebastian Crane walked into that house. And for the first time in 19 years, Cora Bell decided she was going to have to speak. Because what she was watching wasn't a bad deal. It was a trap, and Harrison Cole was walking right into it with a smile on his face. Sebastian Crane was selling a miracle. His company was called Helion Dynamics, and Helion, according to Sebastian Crane, had cracked the single biggest problem in the world. A battery, a new kind of battery, small and cheap and impossibly powerful, that was going to change everything. Phones, cars, whole power grids. Crane had the demos, he had the charts, he had a Nobel Prize winner quoted on his slides, and a waiting list of governments, and a story so good that grown men with billions of dollars sat in Harrison Cole's dining room and leaned forward like children at a campfire. Harrison Cole was going to lead the investment. $1 billion, his firm, his name, his reputation, all of it, riding on Helion Dynamics. It would be the crown of his career, the deal they'd write about, the one that made Harrison Cole not just rich, but legendary. The signing was set for Friday night, a dinner at the estate, champagne, the press release already written, the lawyers standing by, 3 days away. And every one of those 3 days, Sebastian Crane was a guest in Harrison Cole's house, which meant every one of those 3 days, Cora Bell was watching him. Here is what she saw. Watch it the way she watched it. She saw a man who was magic in front of Harrison Cole, and ice the second Cole turned his back. She saw him snap his fingers at her young waiter, Marcus, and call him kid, like it was an insult. She saw him leave a wine glass exactly where he knew someone would have to bend down and get it, just to watch them bend. Little things, cruel little things, done only when the powerful weren't looking. And Cora knew the oldest truth there is about a person's character. It's not how they treat the people who can help them. It's how they treat the people who can't. In front of Cole, Crane was a saint. In front of a waiter, he was something else entirely. And something else. That was the real man. But that wasn't even the thing that scared her. The thing that scared her was the young woman. Crane never traveled alone. He brought a small team, and at the center of it was a young woman, maybe 29, named Dr. Mira Sethi. She was, Crane explained to the room, the genius behind it all. The scientist who'd actually invented the battery, his co-founder, his partner. And Cora Bell watched Dr. Mira Sethi for 3 days, and what she saw turned her blood cold, because Mira Sethi flinched. Every time Crane spoke, she flinched, just a little, a tightening around the eyes. Every time he put his hand on her shoulder, my brilliant partner. She went still, in a way Cora recognized from somewhere very deep. When Crane talked, Mira looked at the floor. When the men asked her a technical question, she'd start to answer, and Crane would smoothly, smilingly cut her off and answer for her, and she'd go quiet, and something behind her eyes would close like a door. That young woman was not a proud co-founder. That young woman was terrified, and Cora Bell knew exactly what a person looks like when they are trapped by someone, and being made to say things they don't believe, and too scared to run. She knew it because she'd worn that look herself, once, a long time ago. We'll get to that. It's coming, and it's the saddest part of this whole story. For now, just know this. By the second night, Cora Bell was certain. The deal was poison, the man was a liar, and the young woman at the center of it was a hostage, not a partner. But certainty isn't proof, and Cora knew that better than anyone. So before she said a single word to Harrison Cole, she did what she always did. She watched harder. On the second night, after the dinner cleared, Cora carried a tray of tea toward the sunroom, where she'd seen Mira slip away alone. And she heard them before she saw them, Crane and Mira on the dark patio just outside, his voice low and smiling and absolutely vicious. "You smile when they ask you a question," Crane was saying. "You smile, and you say, the data speaks for itself, and you let me handle the rest. Or I promise you, Mira, when this is over, you will not work in a lab again as long as you live. I own your name now. I made you. Don't you ever forget what I can unmake." And Mira's voice, so small. Sebastian, when the money's in, they're going to want to see it work. At scale. I can't. That's not your problem. By the time anybody figures that out, we'll be 3 rounds deep and too big to fail. Smile, Mira. Smile, or I'll give them a reason to look at you. Cora stood frozen in the dark hallway with a tea tray in her hands, and her whole body went cold. Because now she didn't just suspect, now she knows. She'd heard it with her own ears. But here's the cruel part. Here's the trap Cora was in. Who was going to believe the housekeeper? She had no recording, no proof, just her 2 ears and 40 years of knowing exactly what a predator sounds like in the dark. If she went to Harrison Cole and said I overheard them on the patio, Crane would smile and call her a confused old woman, and Cole would believe the billionaire, not the maid. That's how it always works. So Cora made a decision. She wasn't going to be able to prove the truth to Harrison Cole. The proof was locked inside a terrified young woman who'd been threatened into silence. The only way the truth was ever coming out was if Mira herself said it, out loud, in a safe room, with someone standing beside her. Cora couldn't break Crane's lie, but maybe she could reach the one person who could. That was the plan. That was always the plan. But first, she owed it to her conscience to give Harrison Cole one honest chance to listen. So she did the thing she'd never done in 19 years. She decided to warn Harrison Cole. She caught him alone in his study, the night before the signing. He was reading the final documents, a glass of scotch beside him, looking like the happiest man alive. "Mr. Cole, may I speak with you for a minute?" He didn't look up. "If it's about the dinner menu, Cora, just ask the caterer." "It's not about the dinner." Something in her voice made him look up. "Mr. Cole!" Cora folded her hands. She kept her voice steady and respectful, the way she'd learned to keep it her whole life. "I don't have any business saying this, and you can tell me to mind my own affairs, and I will. But I've been in this house 19 years, and I've watched a lot of men come through that dining room. And I have to tell you, something is wrong with Mr. Crane, and something is very wrong with that company." Harrison Cole set down his pen. He looked at her, really looked at her, for what might have been the first time in 19 years. And for 1 second, Cora thought she'd reached him. Then he smiled. The kind of smile you give a child. "Cora, I appreciate that you're looking out for me. I do." He leaned back. "But this deal has been through 4 months of due diligence. The smartest people in the world have been over every inch of it. Lawyers, accountants, scientists, 3 separate firms. $1 billion, Cora. You don't put $1 billion somewhere without knowing exactly what you're buying. I'm not talking about the paperwork, Mr. Cole. I'm talking about the man. What about him? He's cruel to the staff when you turn around. He's cruel to that young woman, the scientist, when he thinks no one sees. And she's scared to death, Mr. Cole. A person doesn't act scared in a room full of money unless they're trapped. People who are telling the truth aren't afraid. That girl is afraid of something, and I'd find out what it is before I sign anything." Harrison Cole's smile cooled. Just a degree. "Cora," he said, "do you know how a battery works?" "No, sir." "Do you know what a Series C funding round is? A liquidation preference? A convertible note?" "No, sir." "Right." He picked his pen back up. Gentle. Final. "I value you. I do. But this is a world you don't understand, and I need you to trust that I do understand it. So why don't you let me handle the $1 billion deal?" He gave her a little smile. "And you handle the house. Stay in your lane, Cora. For both our sakes. Stay in your lane." There they were. The 4 words. Cora Bell looked at the most powerful man she knew. holding the pen that was about to ruin him, and she understood that there was nothing more she could say to him. Because to Harrison Cole, wisdom wore a suit. Wisdom had a degree. Wisdom did not pour coffee. "Yes, sir," she said quietly. "I'm sorry to have bothered you." And she walked out. But she did not go to bed. Because Cora Bell had buried a man over a smile exactly like Sebastian Crane's. And she was not going to stand in a doorway and watch it happen again. Let me tell you why this mattered so much to her, because you have to understand it, or the ending won't land the way it's supposed to. 40 years ago, Cora Bell had a husband. His name was Sam. Sam Bell was the gentlest man God ever made. He drove a delivery truck for 30 years and he saved every dollar he could in a coffee can, then a bank, then a little account, because Sam had one dream. He wanted to leave Cora something. He didn't want her cleaning other people's houses when she was old. He wanted to buy her a little house of her own with a porch where she could finally sit down. And one day, a charming man came to their church. He was handsome. He was warm. He talked about an investment, a sure thing, a special opportunity, just for good people like them. Guaranteed returns. Get in early before it's too late. He shook every hand. He learned every name. He came to dinner. He held Cora's hand in both of his and called her family. Sam gave him everything. 30 years in the coffee can. Every dollar of the little house with the porch. And the man disappeared. Of course he did. There was no investment. There never is. He did it to 11 families in that church, and then he moved to the next town and the next church and did it again, because that is what those men do. They don't stop. They just move. Sam Bell never recovered. Not the money, the shame. He'd handed their whole life to a stranger with a nice smile, and he could not forgive himself. And the shame ate him from the inside until there was nothing left. He died 4 years later, and the doctors called it his heart, and they were right, just not the way they meant. Cora went back to cleaning houses. She never got the porch. And she made herself a promise, standing at Sam's grave, that she would never again stand by quietly while a man with a beautiful smile destroyed somebody she could have warned. For 40 years, she never had to keep that promise, until Sebastian Crane. Now, do you understand why she couldn't go to bed? She wasn't trying to save $1 billion. Cora Bell didn't care about Harrison Cole's $1 billion. She was trying to save the young woman with the flinch. Because 40 years too late, Cora Bell finally had a chance to do the thing nobody had done for Sam. She had a chance to warn somebody in time. So that night, the night before the signing, Cora didn't go home. She found Mira. The young woman was alone in the guest wing, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. The way people stare when they're trying to talk themselves into surviving one more day. Cora knocked soft and came in with a cup of warm milk and honey, the way she used to bring it to her own grandchildren. "I didn't ring for anything," Mira said quickly. Scared, even of the maid, especially of the maid, scared of anyone who might be watching, reporting back. "I know, baby. I brought it anyway." Cora set it down. She didn't push. She just sat in the chair across from her, an old woman and a young one, and she said quietly, "I'm not going to ask you any questions. I just want you to know one thing, and then I'll leave you be." She waited until Mira looked up. "Whatever's got you so scared in this house, you didn't do it. You hear me? Whatever he's got you carrying, the shame of it isn't yours. It belongs to him. I've watched a good person die from carrying shame that wasn't theirs to carry. So, I'm just going to leave you that. It isn't yours." And she got up, and she went to the door. And Mira Sethi, who hadn't cried in front of another human being in 3 years, made a small broken sound and whispered, "You don't understand. He'll ruin me." Cora stopped in the doorway. She didn't turn the moment into a rescue. She knew you can't pull a trapped person out before they're ready. You can only show them the doors unlocked. "Maybe," Cora said gently. "Or maybe there's people in this world who'll stand between you and him the second you let them. You don't have to decide tonight. Drink your milk. Get some sleep. But baby, there's gonna come one moment, real soon, where you get to choose. And when it comes, I want you to remember that you're not as alone in it as he's made you feel." Then she left. She had planted the only seed she could. Now everything, the deal, the girl, $1 billion, 40 years of a promise, came down to whether that seed would grow in time. And Cora Bell would not know the answer until the worst possible moment, with the pen already in Harrison Cole's hand. The signing dinner was the next night, and it was magnificent. 40 guests, candlelight on the long table, the lawyers in the library with the documents ready, the press release sitting in an inbox, one click from the world. Sebastian Crane at the head of the table beside Harrison Cole, glowing, telling stories, the king of the evening. And down at the far end, small and silent, Dr. Mira Sethi, pushing food around her plate, flinching every time Crane laughed. Cora Bell worked the room with the silver coffee pot, invisible, as always. And she watched the clock, and she watched Mira, and she felt her own heart pounding, because she knew what she was about to do, and she knew it could cost her the only job she had. After dinner came the toast. Harrison Cole stood, glass raised, and the room hushed. "To Sebastian Crane," Cole said, "and to Helion Dynamics, to the deal that's going to change the world. Let's go sign some papers." The men laughed and applauded and pushed back their chairs to move to the library where $1 billion and a pen were waiting. And Cora Bell set down her coffee pot. She set it down right in the middle of the table, with a soft clink that somehow cut through the whole room, and 40 of the most powerful people in America turned to look at the housekeeper who had just, for the first time in 19 years, made a sound they couldn't ignore. "Cora?" Harrison Cole's voice had an edge, a warning. "Don't. Is everything all right?" Cora Bell did not look at Harrison Cole. She looked down the long table, past all the money, past all the suits, to the one frightened young woman at the end, and she said the 9 words that saved everything. "Honey, before they sign, can I ask you something?" The room went still. Crane's smile flickered. "Mira," Cora said, "gentle, the gentlest voice in the world." She walked down the length of that table, slowly, toward the young woman, and nobody moved to stop her, because there was something happening in her voice that froze the whole room. "I've been watching you for 3 days, baby, and I need to tell you something, and then I'm going to ask you one question, and I want you to look at me when I do. Not at him, at me." The Crane started to rise. "I don't know what this woman thinks she's—" "Sit down, Mr. Crane." That was Harrison Cole. Something in his own chest had started to turn, some instinct 19 years too late, and he said it again, quiet. "Sit down, let her talk." Cora knelt beside Mira's chair so they were eye to eye. "You flinch, honey," Cora said softly. "Every time he speaks, you flinch. You go quiet when he looks at you. You start to answer and he cuts you off, and you let him. And something behind your eyes closes up like a door. I know that flinch. I had it once myself, and I watched my husband have it before a man with a smile just exactly like that one. She didn't even point, but everyone knew, took everything we had, and left him so ashamed he couldn't go on living." The room did not breathe. "You are not safe in your own life right now," Cora said. "I can see it from across a room. And I think you've been carrying something so heavy for so long, all by yourself, that you forgot there might be one person left in the world who'd help you put it down." She took Mira's hand. "Baby, there are 40 people in this house tonight, and I promise you, the second you say the word, every good one of them will stand between you and that man so he can never touch your life again. You are not alone in this room. You hear me? You are not alone." Mira Sethi was shaking now, tears running down her face, and Crane was saying something, some smooth, cold thing about hysteria and unprofessional staff, but nobody was listening to Crane anymore. Everybody was listening to the old woman holding the young woman's hand. "So here's my one question," Cora said, "and you look right at me when you answer it. Not at him. At me." She held Mira's eyes. "Is what's in those papers true? Because if it is, you sign them with my blessing. But if it isn't, If there's a lie in this house tonight, this is the last second you'll ever get to say so before it's too late, for you and for everybody." And Dr. Mirasethi looked at Cora Bell, not at Sebastian Crane, at Cora. And in a voice so small it was barely a sound, with 3 days of flinching and 3 years of terror finally cracking open all at once, she said, "No, none of it is true. The battery doesn't work. It's never worked. He faked the demos. He's been lying to everyone. And he told me if I ever said a word, he'd destroy me. He owns everything I have. I didn't know how to get out." The library doors stood open. The pen sat on the table, untouched. $1 billion hung in the air of that room, and it did not fall. Everything came out after that. It always does, once the first true word is spoken. Helion Dynamics was a fraud, top to bottom. The miracle battery did not exist. The demos were staged, props, hidden wires, a working prototype that wasn't a prototype at all. The Nobel quote was twisted out of context. The waiting list of governments was invented. Sebastian Crane had built $1 billion company out of nothing but charm and other people's belief, and he had kept the one person who knew the truth. Mira, the brilliant young scientist whose name he'd used as a shield, locked in a cage of fear and contracts and threats, because a fraud that big needs a real genius standing next to it to look real. Harrison Cole had been 3 minutes from signing. 3 minutes. If he'd signed, his firm would have poured $1 billion into a lie. When it collapsed, and it would have collapsed, it wouldn't have just been Cole's money. It would have been the pension funds his firm managed, the teachers and firefighters and retirees whose savings rode on Harrison Cole's judgment. Thousands of ordinary people wiped out because a rich man trusted a beautiful smile and ignored the woman with the coffee pot. Cora Bell didn't save Harrison Cole's $1 billion. She saved every quiet person standing behind it who never even knew their lives were in that room. Sebastian Crane was finished that night. The investigators came. Fraud on that scale doesn't stay quiet. And once the first thread was pulled, the whole thing unraveled fast. And the other victims came forward, the ones from before, because men like Crane always have a before. He'd done it twice already, in 2 other cities, the same playbook every time. 11 families, then a different 11, then Cole. Just like the man who took Sam's coffee can move from church to church. They never stop. They just move. Until somebody who knows the playbook finally stands in the doorway and says no further. That night, after 40 years, Cora Bell finally stood in the doorway. And Mirasethi? The world found out the truth about her too, that the real science, the actual brilliant work she'd done before Crane twisted it into a lie, was genuinely extraordinary. She'd been a real scientist with real gifts, trapped by a con man who needed her credibility. Once she was free, once the fear let go, she went on to do legitimate, important work, the kind she'd dreamed of before Crane found her. She kept in touch with Cora for the rest of Cora's life. She called her every Sunday. She said Cora was the first person in 3 years who looked at her and actually saw her. That was always Cora's gift, seeing the people nobody else could see. But the part I really want to tell you about is Harrison Cole, because here is where this story is different from the others. The man who dismissed her, the man who said, "Stay in your lane," he didn't get destroyed. He got something harder. He got to live with the knowledge of how close he came and why he came that close. The morning after, Harrison Cole asked Cora Bell to come to his study. She came, expecting, maybe, to be let go, because rich men don't always love the person who was right when they were wrong. He was sitting at his desk. The unsigned documents were in the trash can, and Harrison Cole, one of the richest men in Greenwich, Connecticut, stood up when she walked in. He'd never once stood up for her in 19 years. "Cora," he said, and his voice wasn't steady. "I have been trying all night to understand how I almost did that. $1 billion, other people's money. And the only person in this entire house who saw the truth was the one person I told to stay in her lane. He had to stop. You tried to tell me. Twice. And I looked at your uniform and I decided you couldn't possibly know anything I didn't. How long have you been seeing things like this in my dining room, Cora? Things I missed? Cora considered whether to be polite. Then she decided that after 19 years, she'd earned the truth. 19 years, Mr. Cole. He closed his eyes. 19 years, he said, and I never once asked you what you thought about anything. No, sir, you didn't. Why didn't you keep trying? After I dismissed you? You could have just let me sign. It would have served me right. And Cora Bell told him the thing she'd never told anyone in that house. She told him about Sam, the coffee can, the smile, the little house with the porch she never got, the shame that ate a gentleman alive, and how she'd made a promise at his grave that she would never again stand quiet while a smiling man destroyed somebody she could have warned. I didn't do it for you, Mr. Cole, she said. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. I did it for that girl. I did it for my Sam. 40 years too late. You and your $1 billion. You were just standing in the way of me keeping a promise. Harrison Cole was quiet for a long, long time. Cora, he finally said, I can't give you back 19 years of being invisible in my own house. And I'm not going to insult you by trying to write you a check, because I don't think your worth is a number, and I think I've insulted you enough. He looked at her. But I'd like to learn to see. Will you teach me? Not the house. People. The thing you do. The thing I've been blind to my whole life. Will you sit in the room from now on, not with the coffee, in a chair, and tell me what you see? Because it turns out the most valuable advisor I've ever had has been pouring my coffee for 19 years, and I'd like to start paying her for the right thing. And Cora Bell, 63 years old, who never got her porch, looked at the man, and she saw that he meant it. That something had actually broken open in him. That he was, maybe, going to be a different kind of rich man now. All right, Mr. Cole, she said. I'll teach you. But the first lesson's free, and here it is. She nodded toward the trash can with the $1 billion deal in it. Watch how a man treats the people who can't do a single thing for him. The waiter, the driver, the woman with the coffee. That's the only true thing you'll ever learn about anybody. Everything else is a costume. Harrison Cole wrote that down. He kept it in his desk for the rest of his life. So, let me leave you with this. And I want you to really carry it out of here. There were 12 men in that room worth more than most countries, and a room full of lawyers, and 4 months of due diligence, and the smartest analysts money could buy, and every single one of them missed it. They missed it because they were all looking at the same thing, the pitch, the charts, the beautiful story. The one person who saw the truth was the one person nobody was looking at, the woman in the gray uniform, the one they'd made so invisible that the con man relaxed right in front of her and showed her exactly who he was. That's the thing about the people we render invisible. We think we're erasing them. We're not. We're handing them the clearest view in the room. They see everything. They've had to. And the day you decide somebody is beneath your attention is the same day you go blind to everything they could have told you. Harrison Cole almost lost $1 billion and a piece of his soul because he could not imagine that wisdom might wear a gray uniform and carry a coffee pot. And how many of us are exactly like him? How many people have tried to tell us something true, and we looked at their clothes, or their job, or their accent, and we decided in 3 seconds that they couldn't possibly know something we didn't? The wisest person in your life might be the one you've trained yourself not to hear. So tell me, down in the comments, and think hard about this one. Has anyone ever tried to warn you about something or someone, and you brushed them off because of who they were, and they turned out to be dead right? Or flip it. Have you ever been Cora, the one who saw it coming, tried to say it, and got told to stay in your lane? Tell me. I read every one of these, and I have a feeling the comments on this one are going to be something special. And if this story got into your chest, if you felt it when that old woman knelt down beside that frightened girl, do me one favor before you go. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notifications because the next story is already waiting, and I think you're going to need it. But before you click away, Do one thing this week. Find the person everybody else looks straight through. The one pouring the coffee, driving the car, cleaning the room, standing quietly at the edge of things. Ask them what they think. And then, this is the hard part. Actually listen. Because the most important thing you'll ever hear might come from the last person you expected to hear it from. I'll see you in the next one.